Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vikas Thakur, and I'm part of the Delhi NCR IIM Indore Alumni Association chapter. Welcome to the second edition of Caravan Down the Line Memory Lane series. Today we are going to, host our own alumni from 2007-2009 batch, Mr. Siddharth Kaushal, who happens to be the district superintendent of police of the Andhra Pradesh cadre, and he is one of the very famous super cop, has been receiving multiple awards and has done a lot of groundwork, involved a lot of technology elements on carrying out some of the citizen governance, anti-terror corps, police capacity building and citizenship engagement. Without wasting much of everyone's time, I welcome Mr. Siddharth Kaushal, and let him speak about his experiences in on the ground on managing the pandemic situation, and prior to that, carrying out some of this technology integration on the on-ground implementation. So over to you, sir.
Right. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Vikash. Good evening, everyone. I mean, it's great to connect with my IIM network. It's been a while. In fact, I was class of 2009, and after that, after a gap of 10 years, it was last year that I visited campus again for the 10th year footprints, and it was quite a revelation. The campus has improved a lot. It was great to see. I don't know, which classes would most of you belong to. What would be the median, so to speak, class here? But I gather that most of you would be after 2009. So, thanks, Vikash, firstly, because he pinged me with this idea to connect with all and probably just share some of what we've been doing here. On that, I don't really have a structured sort of presentation or delivery prepared, but since we decided to sort of speak about, COVID, of course, no matter what we do, right now it's unavoidable to speak about COVID, and we are at the forefront of it here in Andhra Pradesh, in Prakasam district. So we'll probably touch upon that. A lot of lessons there to draw for law enforcement and for management in general. Also, some of the first impressions that come to my mind, when I'm speaking to a gathering of people, the cohort of people that we all are, the preschool graduates, what really comes to my mind, something that I'd always want to, emphasize and share with people, is that it's astounding. It's absolutely astounding how much, how useful a management education and a management training is in the government services, because government is a behemoth. It's a leviathan, right? It is the largest player, and it is the largest institution by far, and also perhaps the most unwieldy and complex institution with the most diverse set of stakeholders. Everyone's a stakeholder in the government. When one enters the government from the background that we all share, the first thing that strikes you is the sheer scope there is to put into practice, your training and your education, and how small things make a large impact. So I'm posted here in Prakasam right now. This is in fact the 10th largest district in the country by area, with about 18,000 square kilometers, and we have about 40 lakh population. So there's 4 million. That's just 500,000 short of Sweden or New Zealand rather. So something like that. So you see, whatever little thing we do here, if we're able to make a small systemic improvement, the impact that it has is tremendous. And also nowadays, because of improvement in communication and a constant effort within the government to learn from best practices, if you manage to make a systematic improvement somewhere, it gets replicated very fast, and it can within no time it can lead to a systemic improvement in government services for an entire state of people. I mean, state of Andhra Pradesh is about I think 6 crores, 5.5 crores. So that way, that is something that strikes you when you enter the system, that it's a Byzantine institution, and there's a lot to do, and also that it has been fossilized for a very long time. In the government, I mean, if you would, so many processes and so many customs and practices and behaviors that you encounter in the governmental system, it all seems very, archaic, and it look as if I mean, something totally out of place, something that we wouldn't expect. I mean, even the way we address each other, the way we communicate, the sort of the sociology of government is very different from the private sector. So a lot of very interesting and enriching sort of experiences that you gather along the way when you work for the government. So I particularly feel that among all the fields of studies, all the trainings that one can have, or one can do before entering the government, a management training is probably the most relevant, more than anything else, even more than law. I mean, I'm in law enforcement, but I'd say that even more than law, it's management, and it's system administration. Not that hardware related system administration, which most of you would be more familiar with, but actual system administration and system integration, so to speak. That said, a government is also notoriously difficult to change. It's very difficult to change behaviors in the government. It doesn't happen. I mean, because there is a huge the differential of skills, the differential of education ability, is vast in the government. So on the one hand, at the top end of the government, you have IIM graduates, IIT graduates, Harvard graduates, US returnees, McKinsey में काम करके global consultancy के experience के साथ people enter. And on the other hand, you have even today, I mean, in my organization, I have about 4,000 odd working in this district. I have people who are just 7th pass or 8th pass. So you see the differential in skill and education, and that has a consequence in how you handle the system. It's sort of a multi-speed system. It doesn't move at the same time. All components of this system don't move in tandem, in unison at the same time. All components of this system are not capable of absorbing all information and all instruction and all technologies at the same time. Plus, this is a very open system. I mean, we are totally integrated into the politics and into the economy and into the society. I mean the three, so to speak, large spheres of activity that we traditionally divide society up into. We are totally integrated into all three of those. So there is a very visible and very pervasive presence, an impulse which comes from the politics of the land. So does from the sociology of the land, the society, in general. I mean, whatever the characteristics of the society are. I mean, if different parts of India are different. I mean, there are different variables at play. Things work out differently. People relate to each other differently. They, caste equations are different. Community equations are different. Social tensions are different. Urbanization is variable across the landscape. So that again, that sort of has an impact on how we function. Then of course, even sometimes the the physical diversity also matters. As I said, we are in the business of offering protection of the law and justice. I mean, the service that we produce is protection of the law and access to justice, so to speak. So these are the two principal services that we as an enterprise offer. And these are delivered, in a very in very sublime as well as very concrete, blunt ways. It's again spread across the entire spectrum of delivery. That also really makes a difference. So just to sort of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here is, so to avail a service, I mean, if you want to avail a service, say a haircut, you'd probably need to go to a saloon and get somebody to, get into a sort of an implied contract that, on the payment of some user charge, you'll get the service of a haircut or whatever. Nowadays, you can get somebody an urban clap, I suppose. In that sense, you avail police service. The point of the point where you start availing a police service is normally the police station. You have a need for protection of the law or for justice in some manner. You go to the police station and you avail the service over there. That becomes the point of service availability or accessibility, point of access, so to speak. But that's just one way. That's just one way you avail police services. But every one of you avails police service latently as well. I mean, the fact that you're all sitting here securely in your homes, there is a sense of security at the back of your mind that nobody will just come inside and, burgle your house. When you step out from going from, point A to point B, you do so with the implicit assumption that, the traffic would be regulated. I'll be given my right of way and nobody would interrupt me. And daily life is, in fact, led on the premise that your life, liberty, and property is secure, or somebody is securing it. So, in that sense, all of us consume police services latently. We're all latent consumers of police service. So, one could say that an active way to consume police services to go to the police station and do it, and latently, but all of us do. And then latent consumption has a very strong mental or psychological dimension to it. So that has to be addressed. That sense of security, which is generated in the minds of the citizens, which is something that you feel, is something that we as an institution have to generate and maintain through our conduct. So it's a very complex. I mean, if you think of it in the reference of service delivery, it's a very, very complex, sophisticated, and sort of nuanced service that is being delivered by the police. It's sovereign service. It's sort of like the function of the state. So it is that context I wanted to set before I spoke about the projects that we undertook. Much of what we have done in the last 1 year has had to do with the things which really got highlighted were have to do with technology, but mind you, it's not high technology. It's not as if we are using quantum physics to do something, or nothing of that sort. As I said, it's not the point here. The point here is a radical increase in the pull. So the problem, if you come at it from a different direction, the problem with the police, for instance, the basic problem with the police in the country is that people don't find police very approachable, very accessible. At the police station level, all of us have had some sort of a negative experience, or directly, or someone we know has had a negative experience. So the fundamental problem starts there, that it is not easy to avail the police service in a country like India, and that's a common feature of all post-colonial nations. I mean, it's not something unique to India. So that is the starting point of all the projects that we undertook, that how to make it easy for people to avail the police services. So what we thought was that uh, if someone goes to a police station and the police station staff, they knew somehow that if they don't serve the citizen well at the first instance of at the first opportunity itself, if the citizen had a reliable recourse to the superintending authority, which is the SP, that sort of will change their behavior and make it better. But the problem is that SP is not really accessible. I mean, it's not very easy. One person to be available to 40 lakhs is not easy. Plus, this system is rigged in such a manner that the collector or the SP is always preoccupied, is just swamped with concerns and various works. So the challenge then was to somehow make the SP radically accessible and radically available to everybody, very, very easily available to everybody, in such a manner that the message goes down to the last police station that an SP is just accessible round the corner, and they have to improve their behavior. So in that sense, again, that's how we thought of using simple available technology to allow, to enable the public, the citizens, to uh, avail the services of police and to have that recourse to the SP from their local police stations without having to come to the headquarters in a reliable, systematic, programmatic manner. So what we decided was to, firstly, we connected all our police stations with a video conferencing system. Incidentally, at the time, I mean, now everyone, because of the lockdowns, everyone's aware of Zoom and everyone's using it. But last year, when we started the project, at the time, pretty much Zoom was a very niche sort of being more limited to the corporate sector, and hardly anybody in the government ever used it. Certainly not that we came across about it. So we picked up the Zoom application, and then we set up small terminals across the district, and we allowed the public to come and speak to the SP directly. So without having to come, as I said, Prakasam is the 10th largest district in the country. The farthest points in the district could be more than 220, 230 kilometers apart. So that even that physical access is also difficult, apart from the fact that administratively and otherwise institutionally SP is difficult to access. So that's what we did. That we set up around 84 terminals across the district, and we made it programmatic. We didn't do it in an ad hoc or a casual manner. We made a schedule. We put in place some standard operating procedures. We advertised it. We popularized it, and we ensured that people were aware of it and people were able to avail it. So from one single point of access, now people had 84. So that changed things quite a bit for a public point of view. From a public point of view, somebody who's staying in, so I have a very far off place called Pullal Cheruvu. So from there to come to the headquarters, it takes about 4 hours, and it implies a loss of day's wage. So then now with our system, it was anybody who wants to connect to the SP could do so directly from Pullal Cheruvu. That sort of bridged the gap, so to speak. Nobody had to come to headquarters to do that. Anybody could just walk in. So police station, the doors were thrown open. They were like open houses. So on designated days, which in our case was Monday, people could just walk in and directly connect to the SP, lodge their complaint, and we would work on that. Then after that, then we had a fixed time frame within which we'll resolve the complaint. We generated, complaint IDs, and we set up a small MIS to go with it. So that's how that this is the sort of like the genesis of the service, which was later called Spandana. Then it was expanded again using that same sort of platform. We enabled anybody who had any grievance in Prakasam district, any issue in Prakasam district. We enabled anybody to connect from anywhere globally, of course, to connect with the SP and launch that. So we really had a good response to that service as well, that format of the service. We had people initially connecting in from Hyderabad, from Bangalore, from Chennai, from Bombay. Slowly, then we had people started connecting with us from Dubai, from US. I mean, there are a lot of Andhra Pradesh also is one of those states which has a lot of non-resident population abroad. So they started connecting. I mean, they all have issues. I mean, by now I think you'd realize. I mean, if any of you have any links with your village or some place in the hinterland, you'd know that issues keep coming up and there is really no recourse. So in that situation, if you're living in New Jersey, you have old parents back home and they have an issue, and you can reliably, very, very easily directly connect with your SP, just lodge the complaint and then track it, properly being resolved. It sort of, it was a good accomplishment, and that sort of model was very well received. So what we like to sort of in a rhetorical manner, what we used to claim back when it was first done, was that we're a service which is available everywhere in the district, accessible from anywhere in the world, and delivered on time, on site. So that's what that's how we used to sort of conceptualize this service. I mean, you could call it grievance redressal, you could call it, but then usually the equivalent of this in the corporate sector or other regular service economy would be something like a hotline or a helpline, so to speak. But then it became more than that. Now we noticed that about 50% of our users of this Spandana service were women, whereas at the police station it's only 10%. So then that gives you an idea that through that channel of service delivery, from that point of access, only 10% are women, whereas through this channel, 50% are women. So then that makes you understand that this has increased the access to justice for women. It has made it easier for women to come and avail police help and police services. So there was a sort of an unmet need among the women, the citizens who are women, who needed protection of the law, who needed access to justice, but somehow it was not easy or comfortable, or there were barriers for them to do that at the local police station. And once we introduced this Spandana service, that barrier was somehow reduced, and as a result, we saw more women availing the service. And that's also quite significant. I mean, from 10% to about 50%. It's a very large proportion, change in proportion. Then another thing we observed was old people, poor people, particularly poor people, and the political opposition. This is a point that I don't discuss publicly very often, but as you can imagine, it is always easier for the persons who are part of the establishment, part of the ruling establishment, to avail help from government institutions, and police being one of those institutions. What we observed was that even the political opposition, they started availing and approaching police for their complaints and their issues more through this service, because they had faith that if they approach us through this channel, it will be dealt with fairly, or it would be disposed of in a proper manner. So I would say, that there was a definite systematic improvement. Then it was noticed very soon. All districts in the state adopted this model, and then slowly, organically, many districts in other states started adopting this model, and then BPR&D, Bureau of Police Research and Development, they selected this Spandana project to be part of their national police mission. So it was slated for implementation all across. That was the idea. So and the economics of the project were also very very favorable. I mean, we hardly spent anything. I mean, traditional video conferencing systems are quite expensive, but we make did with the old computer systems and small inexpensive hardware and Zoom software, so that hardly cost us anything. I think about 2,500 per terminal. So we sort of averaged it out, and we figured that the amount of money that you save by using this system, you save money by not wasting mileage on the road, the fuel expenses, and man hours that you lose in travel. So the amount of money that you were saving as a result of using the system, we calculated that the whole system pays for itself within a month. So essentially, this was like a negative expenditure proposition. So with saving money, you were improving service standards, and that also in some respect in a radical manner. Once we did that, we also realized that we can use the same system to internally do our own process re-engineering. So Spandana was about citizen service delivery and citizen service improvement, access to justice for the citizens. We sort of turned the project inwards and made it Parivartan. So Parivartan was about doing our own internal departmental processes in a more efficient and effective manner. So what we did was, so we have a system. So the performance review, for instance, I mean, all of you are familiar with performance review, of course. There isn't, such a thing called performance review per se in the government, but we do have a whatever performance review we have is it hinges around a system of monthly review meetings. So there's something called a crime review meeting. This happens all over the country, every district. Even where you are sitting, I'm sure it happens there. So in which the SP convenes all the officers of the district. They sort of get together at the headquarters, and they sit down, and they do some review of crime and cases and services, etc. And based on that, next month targets are given, and that's sort of is the process. So essentially, a physical gathering, physical meeting, and it's cumbersome. It's very cumbersome because, as I said, I have officers spread across 84 locations and very, very far off locations. It takes, for the last man, for the last officer in the district, it takes him 8 hours to commute. So again, we saved all that, drain of energy and fuel and money. We started doing our performance review on video link. So we could even increase the frequency of it. So instead of a monthly crime meeting, I mean, no one does crime meeting more than once a month across the country because it's very cumbersome. It's very cumbersome. It's very inconvenient, and it involves so much travel. It's so tiring. So once we shifted to a digital format, we were able to do it not once a month, but once a week. And the number of participants is also potentially indefinite. So instead of only sub-inspectors and inspectors and above convening here, We had head constables and assistant sub-inspectors also joining in, logging in, and being a part of participating in the proceedings. So when a large number of people in the organization participate in performance review, it makes it more effective. It has a salubrious effect. If the goals, if the values which are being set as an organizational goal, in that process of setting those values and setting those goals, if the most the largest proportion of your organizational members, if they participate, it leads to a proper alignment of the organization to those goals. So that happened, because head constables and ASIs are important on the field. They are the ones who carry out. They are the cutting edge. They are the actual, service provision makers on the ground. So for the first time, anywhere in the country, in any district, we had the ASIs and the head constables participating in the SP's review in a full-fledged manner, and not once a month, but once a week. So that also sort of increased the scope, scale, and impact of this process of performance review. Similarly, as a part of Parivartan, we also picked up another important process, capacity building. I mean, no one calls it capacity building in the government, but to sort of frame it in those terms would make it you would make it recognizable to all of you immediately. So so in police we say training. We don't say capacity building. So training is hinging around a system of physical classrooms. There's a trainer and there are trainees, and they all come and sit, and there's a lecture. Again, one trainer can only train 30-35 people at a time, and getting good skilled trainers is an issue. They usually are available in Hyderabad, Chennai, Bangalore, somewhere. I mean, not in hinterland, Mofussil towns like Prakasam. So once we use the same system to conduct our trainings, we set up virtual classrooms. So from physical classrooms, we moved to virtual classrooms. We set up a small virtual classroom in every police station. We connected good advocates and legal experts and forensic experts and all the different kinds of trainers who are relevant to us. We started connecting them from Hyderabad and from Bangalore and different places, and they started delivering their content and training through this system. Again, that radically increased the impact, the scale and scope of the process. I mean, before this, I could only, if I had one trainer available to me, he had to be physically available here. He could only impart training to about 30-35 people at a time. So for a force of 4,000, I needed more than 100 training cycles to complete any lesson which I want my entire force to learn. I needed 100 iterations of the same, and that too, all the expenditure, calling everyone in the headquarters, making them stay at the training center and doing it. But now with the way we are doing it in the digital format, I can train my entire force in less than 10 cycles. I mean, usually we, and it's in situ, it's in on site. They're not displaced. Nobody is displaced. In fact, this is something that you may or may not be able to appreciate, but policing is an emergency service. We have to be available in our jurisdictions all the time. We have to be available to handle any emergency, to respond to any situation. So that's the one reason why training doesn't really happen very often in the police and in the government in general also, because people are not relieved. I have myself been nominated for foreign training 3 times in the last 1 year, but the government didn't relieve me because they needed somebody to be here and to be available and to take responsibility and to look after the jurisdiction. So people don't get sent for training very often, particularly when they're in very, very focal positions. So that problem was also solved, because now the training happens on site. It happens, right where you are. It happens from your local police stations. You're not displaced in any manner. So training doesn't cause disruption to the work anymore here. So these two things, again, Parivartan, we took these two things and sort of scaled it up, and then again it was noticed by others, and now then other districts also started doing it. So that was about Spandana and Parivartana. So this is where essentially, I mean, no high technology used. The process design was changed. It was decentralized and it was digitized, and as a result, we were able to, quite significantly expand the scale, scope, and impact, as I keep saying, and save a lot of money in the process. I mean, we did this calculation. I don't have it with me right now, but the amount of man hours, productive man hours that we saved in the process is equivalent to having 15% extra workforce. Similarly, the vehicle depreciation that we saved was tantamount to having 10% of your vehicle fleet additionally, given to you every year. And there was another metric I forgot. So we did some sort of calculations to bring into focus, really contextualize the efficiency gains in terms of manpower, in terms of equipment depreciation, and in pure monetary terms as well, in terms of how fast it takes to recover the cost. So all these things were done, and it got us good recognition. It got us a few awards here and there, and so that's what happened. I was supposed to actually come to Delhi, and prepare a roadmap for implementation of this countrywide before COVID struck. So we'll see. I mean, what happens after this. So this was a project. Other than that, I mean, some of the other projects that we've undertaken in the last 1 year, we undertook a project called GEO. Project GEO. GEO stands for Junior Investigation Officer. If you've ever actually visited a police station, you will realize that when the officer in charge of the police station, the SHO ordinarily, is not there, there's absolutely no response. It's a nightmare to get anything done. I mean, usually you'll get called, you'll get responses like, "Arey sir, nahi hai, saab nahi hai, baad mein aao, kal aao, parson aao," something like that. "Abhi saab nahi aaya, wait karo." Kuch bhi nahi, matlab, absolutely no responsible decision making happens at a police station unless the officer in charge is present. And similarly, you would have heard about the huge pendency of cases in the courts, in the judicial system of India. There is an equally alarming pendency of investigations in the police stations of India. So why am I beginning with these two anecdotes? Is that both these things, lack of responsible decision making and a lack of capacity to investigate, lack of that investigative capacity, both these things are quite fundamentally linked. Essentially because in a typical police station, I mean, perhaps places like Delhi, Bombay, large cities would be exceptions, but typically in a police station there is one officer, a sub-inspector or an inspector, and then there are other ranks, ASIs, head constables, constables, home guards, and the only one who is authorized to file a charge sheet in a court of law is the SHO himself. So charge sheet, for those of you who don't know, charge sheet is the final product of a police investigation. So when police investigates a case, the final product of the investigation is a charge sheet, which is sort of the report that the police files in the court based on which the trial happens or the trial proceeds. So only the officer in charge of a police station is authorized to file a charge sheet. So because of that reason, and because of historically the rank and file of police and the military being drawn from rural agrarian peasant communities, we never really had other ranks doing any investigation or detective work. So detectives were always officers. And that led to a situation where responsible decision making got concentrated only at the officer level, and as a result, all these behavioral and systematic ill effects. So we undertook this project GEO, Junior Investigation Officer, with the intention of building capacity of all the rank and file, particularly the head constables and the ASIs, assistant sub inspectors, uh, building their capacity for responsible decision making and particularly for investigation of cases. Uh, Investigation of cases. So there's a in other police departments across the world also there is a distinction between uh, law and order or patrol duties and detective work. I mean, you probably would have seen in movies. Uh, there is a patrol policeman. Even if you see Hollywood movies, you'd see that somebody responds, some nearby patrol responds to a crime scene in uniform, and then some guy in a civil dress in muftis, he will come and he'll show his badge and enter the crime scene, and he'll be doing the murder investigation or the crime investigation. So detective work, crime investigation is separate, and this law and order duty, the patrol duty, is separate. So we wanted even the juniors, the rank and file of police, to be able to do the detective work, to be able to do the investigative work. So we needed to train them properly. As I said, we didn't have the capacity for all these people to be sent to some detective training school and then be trained. I could not have my force away from the field and not being available there to do the basic law and order function, and then have them away somewhere else and then being trained. So what we decided was that we will again train them on site. So this was essentially a program of on site capacity building where we will inject learning opportunities in their day to day work. So the day to day uh, the day to day timetable, the day to day schedule, will hack into that, will hack the day to day schedule of a police station and inject learning opportunities within that. So training will not be separate from work. Work will be training and training will be work. That kind of a philosophy. So what we did was uh, we started changing the police station routine. We got blackboards in all police stations, benches everywhere. All our police stations today resemble classrooms. We adopted some credos. Every case is a case study. So every case became sort of like a case study where all the people in the police station were made to sit down, and then they were made to understand. They all started noting down things. Every crime scene became a classroom, so to speak. Any murder occurs or any dead body turns up, any theft occurs, we have all of these people go there and attend to it and take down notes. Essentially, injecting, as I said, learning opportunities in their day-to-day routine, not taking them out of their environment, working environment, putting them in a classroom, and then doing some theoretical exercise and then sending back to the same environment. So it doesn't work like that. I mean, that has been tried ad nauseum for the last 70 years. It has not happened. Every police department has tried training the rank and file, the other ranks, the head constables and the ASIs. It's never worked because you can't take somebody out of their environment, put them in an artificial environment, give some artificial instruction, and then send them back to the real environment and expect them to function there. I mean, it is all right with highly skilled workers. I mean, people like you and me, we can benefit from abstract instruction. We can do that. We can conceptualize and then we can operationalize it. But at the as I said, the skill differential is very large. The education differential is very large. When you're dealing with the rank and file of an organization, especially the police, you need to have operational instructions only. You cannot give abstract instructions. That won't work. So the only way we could train them was to do so on the job in their environment as well. And the real difference, how Project Geo, how it was different from any other project before it, was that we focused on psychological interventions. Because now here is where I come back to the very complex sociology of police, the very, very complex organizational dynamics of police. Even within a police station, there is a lot of of course, there is a difference of, there is a caste difference, there is a class difference, there is a lot of differences in alignments. There is a lot of feudal character even today. So in that sense, that it for a constable or a head constable, there isn't any opportunity, or there isn't a conducive environment to cultivate or nurture his or her capacities as an individual. That doesn't happen. And this hierarchy, that in a uniformed organization, hierarchy is inevitable. So we had to find some way to counter that. So we made these simple rules. For instance, rule number 1 was, no policeman will be made to stand and talk to the SHO, to the station in charge. The station in charge shall compulsorily offer a seat to every constable or head constable or any policeman who comes and speaks to him. This seems like a small thing, but it was actually quite it was unheard of. I mean, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere. So we started implementing it very strictly, and for the very first time in their lives, a lot of these people, a lot of the rank and file, actually sat in front of their officer and spoke to them. Then we gave little nameplates and designated places to the constables and head constables as well. So it doesn't happen in a police station. Only the inspector or the sub inspector has his own designated space with a nameplate, etc. So he has that identification, that recognition. So we gave that to the constables and head constables as well. So they got their own place, they got their nameplate. Similarly, even all the other departments that police has to deal with in the course of investigation, doctors, forensic scientists, the revenue officers, the tehsildar, the land records departments, etc., etc. We started making them interact with our constables, head constables, and so in the course of that process, we really saw a very very profound change in the whole organization. I even told that, normally there's a culture of punishment in police and the military. If something goes wrong, we are very eager to dish out a punishment, some sort of a disciplinary measure, something on record, something adverse. So we gave them a punishment holiday, so to speak, like a tax holiday. So ek saal tak koi bhi galti karenge, nobody will be held responsible for it. So that sort of brought them forward to do it. So doing a whole host of things, we managed to come to a situation where today, before Project Geo, only 2% of the cases were investigated by a policeman below the rank of a sub-inspector in Prakasam district. And just before COVID struck, the situation was that 90% of our cases were being investigated by officers below the rank of a sub-inspector. So we sort of inverted the organizational pyramid, so to speak, in terms of responsible decision making and investigation capacity. The pendency of cases reduced, because earlier there are only 130 sub-inspectors in the district, whereas there are some 700 odd head constables. So the investigative capacity of the system increased by 7 to 8 times. So we're not talking of 10% gain or 20% gain. We're talking of 500%, 600% gain in capacity of the system. And similarly, the behavior with the public, even now, even when the SHO is not there, there are 5 to 6 responsible decision makers who are capable of attending to the public and listening to their grievance and responding to the situation and making the right decision in those circumstances. So we experienced those changes, and that the hierarchy reduced. A lot of congenial atmosphere came in. We even involved the family. So I wrote a letter to all the families of the head constables and constables, urging them to push their husbands, their fathers, their brothers, sisters, whatever, towards achieving this target of being a full-fledged detective investigation officer. So we did a lot of things. We tried to essentially focusing on psychological, well-being and workplace well-being, and on-site training and development, not looking at training as something separate from work. So this project also was appreciated, and we got good recognition for it. I mean, I think I've already taken a lot of time. Just quickly, there's another project that we undertook called Tata. So we called it Tata, which stood for uh, training and technology adoption. And what was Tata full form enti, Bharat? Tata full form enti? Yeah, trainings and activities for technology adoption. So, government is very good at introducing technology, but very poor at imbibing it fundamentally and really adopting it in its day-to-day operations. So we started a project called Tata, trainings and activities for technology adoption. So we usually try to brand our initiatives in a catchy manner. So that's why you have names like Project Geo, Project Tata, etc. So we did that. So it was essentially a series of workshops wherein we trained our people in regular day-to-day technologies, making them smart citizens, smart individuals first, and then smart policemen as well. In some cases, it was as basic as teaching them how to shop online and make payments online, and it varied from that end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, where I'm teaching them to use surveillance software and do perform analytics on call data records, etc. So the full spectrum of technology, from the one which an individual needs day to day to be a functioning member of the 21st century society, to specialized law enforcement applications. We started training them. That also got interrupted by COVID. So we were on course to becoming the first district of the country, the only district of the country where our force would have been 100% technology trained down to the last constable. So every last constable of this district would have been trained in police applications, police technology applications, had it not been for COVID. So we'll resume it perhaps after 31st. So that is also something we undertook then. Yeah, we raised the commando team in the middle of all this. So that was a side project. We raised a SWAT team, a special weapons and tactics team. I mean, I worked in a commando force before I was here. I was posted as assault commander with Greyhounds. Greyhounds is the best police commando force in the country. It's a jungle commando force. It's an anti-Naxal force. I was there as an assault commander. I spent a lot of time in Greyhounds. I personally went for operations in Andhra Orissa border, in the jungle areas of Andhra Orissa border. We used to, be in the forest for days together, 7 days, 8 days, in that terrain. So we worked very closely with the special force. So that special forces experience I used here, and we raised a commando force. So that was the first fully fledged SWAT team to be raised entirely within the district and to be deployed and equipped within the district at the time. When we raised our SWAT team, there was a SWAT team in Punjab at that time, that was for the state, and there was a SWAT team in Delhi. So apart from that, we were the only other place which had a fully functioning SWAT team, and we raised it entirely on our own. They had a full complement of all the weapons, tactics, anti-hijack, bomb diffusion, special tactics, urban tactics, everything. So we raised that commando force here, and that also was appreciated and replicated across the state. They were also being given training in disaster management again, just before COVID struck. So they would have been helpful in that as well. That is it. And I suppose another project which got us award in the last 1 year was Abhay. Abhay was after the Nirbhaya incident, Disha incident, sorry. The Disha incident, we were the first ones to launch a drop home service for women at night time, which was then replicated all across the country, I suppose. I mean, now I suppose it's there everywhere once we did it, wherein any woman in the district could call the dial 100 helpline and state her emergency. And if she was in a helpless position, no matter where you are, a police vehicle nearby would come and offer a safe drop home. That service, that this facility was conceived as a service by us. We called it Abhay, and we launched it. And because it sort of responded to the need of the hour back then, if you remember, after the Hyderabad rape incident, that was sort of the spirit of the time. So because it was a appropriate response to that, it spread very fast, and I think within a month of us doing it, pretty much all states had it in some or the other shape. So yeah, so these are the things that we've been up to in the last 1 year, and we have a lot of other plans. I think this yeah, COVID. I forgot to speak about COVID. Huh?
Yes,
We are
Siddharth.
yeah.
Yeah, Vikash here. I think a lot of the questions around COVID and the challenges on implementations during some of these initiatives have already started popping up. So would it be okay to take some of these questions now?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. So COVID, we
And
can deal with it in a question answer format. Yeah.
yes, and before we take up the question answers, I just wanted to kind of update you. It's kind of a mini reunion for you as well, because at least 10 of your batchmates are currently joining in, viewing you live.
Oh,
Some of
great,
the names
man.
that I can see is Chetan Anantan, Meghna, Jayavardhana, Chakra, Rahul Banerjee, Sri Kumar, Kanav Kalia. And I
Okay.
have received multiple messages from your batchmates saying that they are all proud of you. So thought of giving you the message back before you kind of hit the Q&A.
Great, man. Absolutely awesome to have my folks here. Shout out to all of you guys. Yeah.
Okay, sir. So this is Gargi. I'll ask you a few questions,
Yeah.
and we've got questions on similar lines. For example, Anshuman Singh and Gitanshu Goyal are asking questions about any pushback when you've done so many behavioral changes. Did you face any pushbacks? How did you deal with that?
Yeah. Massive, massive pushback. Immediately, instant pushback. So your ideas are dismissed straight away. So when you start something like this, and the things that we did, अरे ये हो नहीं पाएगा, नया लड़का है, जोश पे है, अभी ऐसे कर रहा है, थोड़ा टाइम बाद शांत हो जाएगा. So immediately, you're sort of showered with skepticism, cynicism, and because you're a young guy, you're in a system where the other operatives have been, there much longer than you have been, and you're trying to do things in a totally different manner. So yeah, massive pushback, and you have to deal with it very, very determinedly. Unless you're determined, unless you push it personally, unless you are convinced of it, it's very, very difficult to push through. I mean, these things are tried everywhere, to be honest with you, but they don't usually they don't get institutionalized. Officer jab tak hota hai ek, tab tak chalta hai, aur uske baad the whole thing gets back to normal. So to institutionalize them is a big challenge, and there is a lot of resistance. Government is a notoriously hard institution to reform, and you get pushback from everywhere. That's true.
So, sir, we've got Kushagra Bhatnagar who's asking you about COVID lockdown. How did you implement it? Because right now you have 0 active cases in your district. So, tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about your COVID strategy.
So we had 0 active cases till 3 days back. Then we got 4 new infections, but they're all infections which came from outside. So they aren't transmission or any local infections. So they're still in quarantine. So as of now, out in the open, we still have 0 infections. Uh, we we were the first ones to identify the Tablighi Jamaat phenomenon. We were the first ones to get hit by it in the country. One case hit a district called Guntur, another hit a district called Kurnool, and we got hit by 10 at the same time. So we were the ones who sort of, alerted the Delhi police and then the IB about this phenomena and this super spreading event that happened. Uske baad, the strategy we followed here was, first and foremost, we were very, very ruthless in our containment. We did not, we didn't compromise on it. I mean, again, there's a lot of pressure all the time. As I said, we operate in a very complex environment. We have a lot of stakeholders, and everyone has their own interests in the situation. So we didn't budge on implementation of the lockdown. That was very important to isolate the cases. That was one thing. Second thing was, but lockdown is a very blunt instrument. So uh, uh, how we did how we distinguished ourselves here in Prakasam was on the contact tracing front. We really used a lot of the police detective methods and tools to do very aggressive contact tracing. The information about COVID, the travel history of a person, contact history of a person, where they've been, uh, whom they have come in contact with, how they have entered, how they have bypassed all the controls, etc., is not forthcoming. No one shares that, or no one offers that information voluntarily. So we used all the tools, techniques, and paraphernalia available to us to do very aggressive contact tracing. So the 10 initial cases which we got hit with, we were able to detect thousands of potential contacts of those initial 10 cases. And then very quickly we were able to trace and then isolate them. So I would say that the main two pillars of our COVID strategy were lockdown enforcement in a very ruthless manner, in an absolutely no compromise manner, and on the other hand, surgically proceeding to pick out potential at-risk persons and isolating them. So the blunt force of lockdown and the precise method of tracing contacts and isolating them, these two things helped us a lot. And we also, whatever the government prescribes, so the government keeps on prescribing actions to be taken on the field regularly. There is a video conference which the PM takes with the CM, and following that, the CM will take it with all the collectors and SPs. So that is how there is a chain of command right from the Prime Minister where we get our instructions from. So whatever the instructions were given to us, we sort of unofficially always took a harder stance, and we sort of over implemented it on our own, on our own accord. We if we were asked to say clamp down movement from morning 7 to 7, abhi jaise ho raha hai, we're only allowing it till 1. उससे पहले we asked, if you're told that inter-district travel will start from 1st of this month, we didn't allow it till 14th. So we always on our own, implemented stricter enforcement here, and I was happy to have the district administration here was very, very cooperative with the police. So we were able to persuade them to do what was in the best interest of the district. So that way we were able to control. Otherwise, we are surrounded with high infection and outbreak hotspots around us. We've managed to so far keep it contained.
Okay. Sir, we'll go through just two more questions. One is being asked by a couple of people, Altamash Aslam sir and a few others. They're talking about what are your thoughts on corruption in the system and how difficult is it to maneuver through the entire system?
Uh, this is a this could be a subject for an entire talk, by itself. But I'll tell you, uh, most of us, and we think of corruption, as a sort of a distant phenomena, that it's out there, and we are sort of observers, and we're just looking at it. But really, I mean, all of us are not just observers of this phenomena. We like to believe we are, but we are all participants of it. We are co-creators. Each one of us is a co-creator of this system, this political economy, which operates in the ways that it does, following the logic that it does, which we term as corruption when we observe it in that context. See, petty bribery and this uh, sort of retail corruption is a different phenomena, has a different logic to it, and the large scandals and scams which occur, they have that's a different phenomena, and they have a different logic by which they operate and come into existence. But it is there. I mean, illegal or uh, illicit gains is something that everyone more or less, by nature, uh, sort of is happy to be, benefited from. And I look at it like as a sort of a inevitable uh, concomitant of the way our society is structured. I mean, it's not a governmental phenomena. It's more of a social phenomena. 100%. I mean, I'm convinced of it, and uh, I don't even. I mean, each one of us. I mean, I would always like to say this, that we are all. I mean, even if we are sitting and making a comment on Facebook, or if we are following a certain practice in our lives, the way we lead our own lives, that's from how. So I'll be a little blunt about this. For instance, say on the question of caste, or on the question of following driving rules or etiquettes, such things, on simple issues, most of us are conservative. Most of us sort of just go with the flow. And essentially that's what the problem is. The politics of the country is organized around certain logics of caste, of community, of a competition for limited resources, that it's an inevitable concomitant. And to think that it is something distant and something separate from the way we lead our lives, the way we are as a society, is a mistake. I'd just like to emphasize that point, that it's a integral part of how we have structured our lives, and that's the reason it persists.
Sir, we'll take the last question. We've got some more questions coming up, but we'll try to take them offline with you. So this is the last question. This is from Vikas Agarwal. He's saying that we as IIM graduates may also have many suggestions for the government, but there is no platform to evaluate those suggestions seriously and take the discussion to a higher level. So how do you how would you tell other people if they could give their ideas to the government, or how do people go about that?
It's true. It's true. I mean, there are some channels, but they're not very easily accessible. I mean, even the parliament of the country has these committees which regularly summons experts from respective fields to take their feedback. But again, that is not something very easily accessible to all of us and by all of us. Every important government policy, before it's made, it's released on the website of the ministry concerned, and a lot of public feedback is taken, and that comes through organized channels. So if say on fisheries, a policy is being made, usually there'll be an industry body for fisheries or an association through which they will take feedback. So when it comes to specific sector-specific, domain-specific policies, there are organized channels that the government has to take feedback, which it does, which does happen, which that feedback is incorporated. But other than that, speaking very practically, I don't want to say anything impractical or anything fanciful. The best way to sort of do that is to get in touch with your local MLA, to get in touch with your local SP, local collector. That's the fastest way, where if you're able to persuade them of something, you'll see a very immediate impact on the ground. So my suggestion would be that, although I am aware of it. While I say so, I'm aware of it that it's not probably is not very easy to do that everywhere. So that is sort of one direct way of doing it. Other than that, there are these organized channels which you have to approach the government. The government is as I said, it's a Byzantine institution. It's a nameless, faceless edifice. So there is no one place where you can say that knock knock, I'm here and I'm going to say something. Huh? You will have to do it through organized channels. Uh, Otherwise, if you're lucky, you can tweet to Sushma Swaraj and you'll probably get a response there. But otherwise, my genuine feeling on the matter is to approach it through an organized channel. Always better to have organized activity in the realm of government, or if possible, directly approach the field functionaries.
Okay, and sir, while implementing these technologies, I think this is the last question. Have you faced any data issues or privacy issues?
Uh, well, faced. I mean, I was not confronted with it, but to consider it from the point of view of data security and privacy, yes. I mean, that's a ever-present concern in the government, and especially when we deal with the information of regarding individuals. So many of them, and that's something that's an ongoing concern. As I said, I've not been confronted with that so far, but it's a concern, and it probably, as a district functionary, as a district SP, I don't preside over, or I'm not in charge of a database which is sensitive, so to speak, in the manner that somebody who is in National Informatics Center, who's looking at the Aadhaar database, or somebody at the who's looking after a core banking software or something like that. So in that sense, in my capacity as an SP, I don't really have very sensitive data, except for, say, verification records and criminal records, and some perhaps other information, but it isn't an issue. As we're not vulnerable. I mean, I'm not spread out. I don't have servers here and there. It's all in one place, and we have some protocols on accessing it, etc. We're not really targets of any hacking attempts, so to speak. I mean, so that way, being small and being at the field level, I'm not a vulnerable node in a information network. So that way, I'm not confronted with the problem. But yeah, I'll admit that we haven't dealt with this question at our level in a very solemn manner, so to speak, so far.
Okay, sir, thank you. And Vikash, sir?
Thank you, Garagi. I think, thank you, everyone. So I think it's a great talk. Thank you, Siddharth, for joining us today. On behalf of everyone and IIM Indore Alumni Association, I'd like to thank you. My friend Yash, he and I was chatting offline, and he was mentioned, it's a Gita ka saar in last 1 hour of all the conversations we have heard from you. And thank you for summarizing of all your learnings. And some of this are actually, we could also relate to our day-to-day job as well. When we look at what we call as a transformation project, either in the consulting environment or internal ones, we typically face some of these challenges at a ground level to change the mindset of the people to adapt even at a smallest of the technology. So something that is what you're seeing in the government is absolutely relevant in the private sector as well. So we could relate to that as well. And yeah, and thanks again on behalf of everyone, and thank you everyone joining us today. Before everyone logs out, I have just one small announcement to make. Our director, sir, will be giving us a knowledge session on 25th of May. The topic of his session will be leadership in crisis. The session is scheduled at 3 p.m. on 25th May. You will be hearing more from us in next one day for the how to join and where to join. So I'll, with your permissions, Siddharth sir, I'll thank you again for joining us, and we'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. as I said, I'd warned you before and that I haven't prepared. So I guess I just rambled on about this or that. But, thanks for bearing with me, and, thank you all for joining. And again, shout out to my batchmates, cheers, guys.